Everyone has a story, and I'm collecting them one story at a time. And I haven't practiced this, so I may have to do it a couple of times.
Okay.
This is episode one. Okay. Hi, hello everybody, and welcome to Stella Nova's One Story at a Time. Today I am talking to James Morrow from Charlotte, North Carolina. I thank you so very, very much for being on my show and for being my first um, victim and being patient with all the technical difficulties that we had here in the beginning. So again, I really appreciate you being on, and I hope this is the start of a really amazing thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
thanks. So first of all, can you just kind of start off by telling me a little bit about where you grew up and who raised you, and kind of just your origin story?
I was raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. Both my parents are deceased. They were Clyde and Maggie Morrow. And I believe they did a better than decent job in showing me the ways of the world and tried their best to raise me to be a moral and ethical individual.
Right, right, yeah. So tell me a little bit about your childhood. How was that? How did that look?
I was a spoiled little brat, uh, in all honesty. The youngest of my father's nine kids, and I believe I was my mother's little darling, to be honest with you. And I had a brother and a sister who were closer to my age than my previous siblings. And my sister was in the home up until she was 16 years old. And my brother and I have been best friends for all of my life.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Um, I was one of these kids who enjoyed programs like Star Trek, Lost in Space, all
Right.
these nerdy fandom programs, and I enjoyed lots of westerns. But as I got older, I realized that westerns were just as much as fantasy as Star Trek and anything else I watched.
Yeah, yeah, that's
As I began to read about history, so, I played role-playing games, I enjoyed Star Trek, I enjoyed Space 1999, I was into Star Wars at that time, and a bunch of other stupid B-rate movies that I absolutely thought were crap, but I loved them.
mhm.
My first science fiction convention had to have been what was called the Atlanta Fantasy Fair in 1987.
Okay.
So I went to that and met other people who had the same interests that I had. And we would talk about the books, the novels, the movies, the television shows, the posters. We went through this thing called the dealer's room, and there was all fashion of crap that I did not have any use for, but I wanted it. Posters
Right.
that I wanted. I met at that time, um, I met people who were in the movies
Yeah.
that I saw and I enjoyed. Um, in 1987, as opposed to now, it was mainly males. Um, if you saw females at that time, it was like, oh my God, look a chick. Especially if she was like in some sort of cosplay, like barbarian cosplay. I kid you not, those women did not buy anything in the dealer's room. You always had some slobbering. I won't call him an incel, but may just as well have been. Hey, I'll buy that for you. And like, that's okay. I have my own money.
Oh,
I have
wow.
cash. And it's like they were annoying these women. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was one of them. Um, in those days, being a guy, you're trying to get those numbers, trying to talk to this girl, and that time it wasn't so much that I wanted to. What was I trying to think of at that age? It's like finding a lady at that time who was into comics, into like the Conan Red Sonja thing, like I was in. Even women who played like role playing games beyond Dungeons and Dragons was rare.
Right. Yeah.
Not so much now, but then it was rare in the mid to late 80s.
Mhm.
Um, looking back at it now,
Mhm.
we were annoying little bastards. A lot more was happening at conventions other than the gaming, other
Right.
than the cosplay. I started getting into like what do you call it? Like the workshops. I started going to panels. In fact, I think that's where I met you was at a panel. Um,
Maybe so. So it kind of sounds like your adulthood has really kind of honed in a focus on your fandom and the different conventions and fandoms and
um,
hobbies and kind of nerdy things that you do
yeah, the
by and
things that made
large.
it fun, yeah.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the interview so far with James Morrow, and I would like to hear from you as well. My email address is in the description of this video, so please send me an email and we'll set up a time to have our own chat. And in the meantime, we'll get back to my chat with James Morrow. Thanks.
Even photography now has become a big thing because now I have this thing here,
Oh, that's
and
a good camera.
yeah, I think it's a good. I mean, it's a good starter camera. They're better cameras than this, and I'm
Uh-huh.
still learning it. But
Right.
to make a long story short here, photography is fun for me. I get to like almost like I'm recording a snapshot in time,
Mhm.
and people can look back and say, "Oh, that's what Charlotte looked like. That's what a person looked like. That's what that spirit of the moment was." When I'm at cons, I take pictures of people in cosplay, and this is the trick. You can take a picture of a woman in cosplay, but one of these, I had to teach professional photographers this. Don't talk about her. Talk about, ma'am, did you make that costume yourself? Where did you get the idea? What inspired it? Okay, did you do the makeup yourself? This is a wonderful thing. Okay, can I see this costume from the back if you want to take a picture of her ass without sounding like the asshole that you are? Okay, so um, you can do that. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting here doing this, taking a picture of a lady with this very camera. And this guy's asking her, why you let him take pictures of you with that shitty camera instead of mine? You know why? I'm not speaking to her like she's an object. I'm asking her to
Right.
share her passion with me. And you're trying to get all the pictures of her boobs and her ass and all this other good stuff. This is a person, not a piece of meat. Okay? I mean,
There's
there's a
seems
lot
to
of
be a
different
lot.
characters.
Yeah.
So it's like, especially this lady, she was playing Cammy from like one of these fighting games. I forget, was Street Fighter or one of those.
Uh-huh.
And she was great. There was this one lady I took a picture of, and this is what got me. And I'm going to say this and leave it alone. She was one of these, the one, I forget the name of the superhero, Watchmen. Watchmen, thank you.
Okay.
Says, can I just take a picture of you from your neck up? She's like, what? Can I take a picture of you just from your neck up? I mean, you have a nice costume here, but what you did with your hair and your makeup is absolutely beautiful. Can I capture that? And she did. And then she started crying. I'm like, oh hell, what did I do? And she says, thank you, because I put a lot of work into my hair and nobody ever wants to take a picture of it.
Uh,
And she put a lot of work into her makeup, but nobody wants to take a picture of the makeup and all her hard work. And she
yeah.
was touched that somebody just wanted to take a picture of her face.
Yeah. That you can really make an impression on somebody by the simplest thing. Isn't that amazing? That tiny little question. You made her day, night, weekend, and probably year for that, you know? That's gotta make you feel good.
It made me feel good. I was almost like, oh hell. At the same time,
You
once
thought you
she
were in
started
trouble?
explaining to me, excuse me,
You thought you were in trouble?
I thought I was in trouble. Yes,
Now
I
let me
did.
ask you this. You were talking about DragonCon. How many years have you been going to DragonCon? What was your first year at DragonCon?
Must have been around 1988 or 1989.
Wow.
The
So,
guy who talked me into it, his name was Ed Kramer, and I think he may have died now. I'm not sure, but I do remember his name was Ed Kramer.
mhm.
And I missed 1996. That year I didn't go to DragonCon, but I've been to everyone ever since then.
Wow. Wow. So you could really talk about the how DragonCon has grown and changed over the years, and you would be kind of an expert about that, wouldn't you? Do you want to talk about
I
that a
wouldn't
little?
say expert. I would say a knowledgeable amateur. Yeah.
Okay,
I love going to panels at DragonCon. That's my main thing. I love going to panels, hearing people's view, hear their dissertations.
right.
Um,
So what was it like
I
in the
got
80s at DragonCon? Let's kind of do a little timeline before we get into specifics, just so we can kind of have a what has been different, how in it and how it grew. So tell me how it was in the 80s before 1990, shall we say? First of all, and were
okay.
there costumes panels? What kind of um, content was there in the 80s?
Let's see. 1989 was the one that really sticks in mind. I was at the Hilton. The Hilton was pretty much like the nucleus then of where everything was
Hmm.
at DragonCon.
Okay.
That's when you have front there from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Uh-huh.
Some people got there Thursday. The dealer's room was in the basement of the Hilton. And I remember just being around all these dudes. Um, the whole dark fantasy thing was big then.
Hmm.
Um, the whole cloaks, everyone had cloaks and capes and hoods and dark makeup and vampire teeth. And um, it was very dark and inviting then. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
People had that roguish, thiefy look.
Uh-huh.
Um, think Thieves World was big then, or it's like an anthology of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, remember going to room parties. Room parties were big at Dragon Con then. I would go from one room party to the next. And I remember that was my first time ever eating sushi cooked by a girl named Coco, who was a horse trainer out of
Oh my.
Tennessee. So I remember that.
Oh
And
wow.
I ate it, enjoyed it. Then I remember they had VHS tapes then, okay?
Uh-huh.
And I remember going to this room that had hinte on it, or hentai,
Oh
which
wow.
I'm like, I walk in this room. I'm like, okay. They had some sushi. I'm like, okay, no problem. So they had like this sushi, and it was like calamari, octopus, and cuttlefish. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm eating this. They pop this tape in, and I began to see what these characters were going with those tentacles. And I'm like, I just had a mouthful of creamy tentacles, and you're
Oh gee.
showing me hentai, and I see what these tentacles are doing in this hentai,
Oh no.
and I can't spit this out. So I had to swallow that and like, go, okay, no problem.
Oh geez.
So I went to another room party,
Mm,
and it was like that for years until I believe the hotels were losing money on their booze sales.
yeah.
So they put the panache on a lot of room parties, I believe, for that reason.
Oh man.
So I was going to like panels then. At those days,
Right.
you could have it was 1989. I believe that was the year I saw Jonathan Frid,
Okay.
who played Barnabas Collins in Dark Shadows.
Oh wow.
Now, an old guy like me, there used to be a soap opera called Dark Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
He was in it, and I remember him signing all these autographs for free back in those days. I had to go back to the end of the line because he could only sign one thing at a time. So I went to the end of the line, came back, and he was surprised that I came back to have something else signed, and I did.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting a lot of uh, what we'll call media stars in those days who would
Mhm.
sign things and not charge you for it.
Right.
Um,
So
a
now
lot of
from the 80s to the 90s, when we transition into the 90s, like between 1990 and 1997, shall we say, did it kind of still have that same flow? Was it sort of the same every year, just kind of grew, or
no
did things start changing? Um,
things were changing because different hotels were opening up then. Then that's when the Hyatt became very popular in the 90s.
mhm.
Uh, towards the middle and the end of the 90s. That's when people started going to the Hyatt, the West. You had the Hilton, you had the Marriott, you
Mhm.
had the Hyatt. Those
Right.
were the three major hotels at DragonCon in those years.
Right.
Um, the 90s, we started doing stuff for the Marriott. The 90s, we were drumming. Uh, we started the drum circle in the 90s, and we were
Yeah.
drumming by the swimming pool. So people were swimming, they could actually feel the drumming when they were in the water.
The
The
drum
problem
circle
when we
was
were
in the swimming pool area at the Hyatt, right?
it was at the Hyatt.
Yeah.
One year it was at it was at the Marriott. I remember that.
Mhm.
We pretty much ended at the Hyatt because people would swim and they could feel the drumming when they were in the water.
Uh-huh.
The problem when you drummed outside the Heights, that sound went all the way up.
Oh,
So
yeah.
people were in their rooms at the top and they could still hear the drumming. And it was
Mm.
keeping them awake.
Oh.
Um, so they were bouncing us, the Dragon Con staff was bouncing us from one room to the next to
Wow.
keep the drumming going.
Yeah.
Um, there was this whole thing with I want to say I remember going from Gothy Goth one year in the 90s and it was all swinging. It was like that whole swing. They call it squirrel nut zippers. What year
Yeah.
was the squirrel nut zippers? I think
I
that was
don't
the later
know,
90s.
but it was the late '90s, yeah, so
Yeah.
it was
Remember
that the
those?
goth went to the squirrel nut zippers kinda suit type things.
Yeah, I remember that
Mhm.
going, wow, that was interesting. So I went through that era again.
Yeah.
Um, that's when I really just started discovering the art room.
Yeah.
Um, the art room was different then. Because you had paintings, but you had lots of sculpture there too. You had
Yeah.
lots of different media in the 90s,
Oh, yeah.
and I enjoyed that.
Right.
The dealer's room, again, I believe that was still in the Hilton, and it's like it was a big line to get in. It was like you were like in a sardine
Oh,
can,
wow.
and that was the main thing I would go to an art room to get. It's like books by Chris Aurelius and a bunch of other people. I love the art. I
Mm.
guess that's the way my perverted little mind works, you know. I
Right.
like looking at paintings of typically recreational violets, uh, landscapes, warriors,
Mhm.
the heroines, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There wasn't much venue other than a con for me to like justify getting costumes. So
Right.
I didn't do much of that. At that time, it's like I'm gonna do costuming. I'm gonna go play with these SEA jerks because they're a bunch of fun. Um,
Okay.
so 2000s when things really got weird because I joined this organization called the Klingon Assault Group,
Uh-huh.
and I remember year 2000. I told the Hyatt, look, I need a room, but I need two adjoining rooms. Okay, two adjoining rooms. One of the adjoining rooms, I need you to take all the beds out of. Okay, what? I need you to take all the beds out of them. Can you do that? Yeah. Why would you want
Okay.
that, Mr. Morrow? I need it on the third floor. Can I get that? Yeah. Okay, this is why I need that because we're gonna have like a party in that. Is there gonna be a problem? No. I
Okay.
get there. Mr. Morrow, hi. We got a problem with your room. What's that? Well, we have some instructions here, but we weren't able to get you the room. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna put you in a suite, but one suite is gonna be for this night. The next suite is gonna be for these other two nights. So we had to split your room.
Oh, wow.
Turns out they gave us two adjoining suites. So that was a huge party.
Yeah.
That year, the guy played Galron and the guy played Morgoth from Star Trek, The Next Generation. We had Klingons in it. Robert O'Reilly, that was his name. Robert O'Reilly
Yep.
came there. He was from Virginia, as I later spoke to him, and he did a lot of Shakespeare in that. And he was there at the Klingon party. Another actor who he talked into coming to the Klingon party. Well, those two major Klingon parties, two Klingons were there. And what made that year significant is that's the year I volunteered to do security,
Okay.
and I did security in the con room. The con, not the con room.
The con suite?
The dealer's room. Thank you,
Oh,
dealer's
the
room.
dealer's room, right.
So, so I finished my tour at the dealer's room, ran to that room. Here, Robert Ori's talking about a Klingon party because I was about to come invite him to one, but he invited himself to our party. So that was 2000. From 2000 on, um, the parties were interesting, but they're becoming more. They're put a lot of rules on them. It's a
Yeah.
whole weird about DragonCon and the other con. I used to go to the con suite a lot, and I would meet people, form these relationships that I have even to this day.
Mhm.
Um, and this was like in the mid '90s, but even to this day, I still have these people on my Facebook, and we met in the con suite, talked, and got to know each other.
Right.
Met each other online, got to know each other, and those relationships continued up until today.
Yeah.
Uh, in the 2000s is when things really started getting odd for me at DragonCon because I stopped doing a lot of volunteer work with the
Yeah.
security because they did a lot of con security. And then the con security was getting really, really weird. They wanted you to work longer, but you got little in return for it.
Wow.
Uh, so I'm like, okay, you want me to work, let's see, 12 hours. So that means you want me to work, hold on a moment. That's 6 hours on Friday. Six. Okay, so most of my con is going to be here at the. It's going to be like telling people where they can't go and where they can't go. Dragon Con at this point stopped being what it was around the mid 2000s and
Mm.
became this other thing.
Right.
Um, when I look at old pictures of Dragon Con, I get the sensation, I get the feeling of like actually being at the con at that time. It had a certain spirit about it. It now it just seems more corporate and more. I hate to say it. It feels DragonCon feels corporate now. It feels like you're doing this for the money, not so much for the fandom. And
Right.
any fun I have to create myself. Certain DragonCon spirit has been lost, and they want to focus mainly on the cosplay, and they want to focus on this thing they call the Walk of Fame. When's the last time you attended DragonCon, if you don't mind me asking?
The last time I went was 2014. It was when
Okay.
Kira was about a year and a half old, and it was just too much. It was just too much. I couldn't do it anymore. There was too many people shoulder to shoulder. I couldn't get into any panels. The Walk of Fame, I did talk to a few folks in the Walk of Fame. Um, but yeah, it just wasn't fun. It didn't feel like it used to back in the 90s, like you had said. So
Uh,
um yeah,
who did I speak to about this? His name was James Marsters, I believe his name was.
that was the year that everything changed. Was the year that James Marsters, I wasn't gonna say it because this is your story, but that was the year
But
that everything changed, wasn't it?
he was like, they charging how much? They paying how much for an autograph?
Right.
And he turned this guy says, $25? Now, mind you, this is an actor I've never met before, never seen him in anything. How we met was he was coming into an elevator talking to his handler. I was going on the elevator. He ran right into me. He says, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? Excuse me." I'm saying, "Sir, it's okay. Oh, my name is James Marsters and this, that, and the other thing." So I'm not hearing the conversation because he had a huge throng of women behind him. All right.
Yep.
And he was like signing their autographs, and his handler's going, "Dude, we have to charge $25 per autograph." It's like, "What? 25 bucks?" And he just went through the line. And it's like, I didn't know, but to hear him talk was like, we're contracted with the con to like you do A, B, C, and D. Yeah, we have a contract, huh? Okay, keep signing. Okay, so he kept, and his friend was like, can we get a selfie? This is the first time I ever heard the word selfie used, was in 2014. So he's like, sure. And these people like start clicking their cameras, like, put their pictures up. There were a lot of cameras then, like little small cameras.
Yeah.
but some people had phones that were like compared to this thing, this
Right.
phone was like tiny and microscopic, and I need like little fingers to tap the but you know, he did that with every person in that line. Then they had this Walk of Fame thing. I went there and saw some people who I seen on television, this, that, and the other thing. And they said this is both good and bad. It says the worst part about it is um, people have to actually come up and pay you for your autograph. Okay, I can't just have can't sign their pictures. They have to buy mine,
Mhm.
and that bothered a lot of the actors who were there. They said this is
Yeah.
a bad idea,
Mhm.
and they love the cons where you could actually have inner contact. People could come up to you and talk to you,
Yeah.
say like, "Wow, your show is really good. I love it, man. Your show sucks. Every week I watch that show, waiting for it to get better, and it
Oh,
does."
no.
And this dude, he was a certain Star Trek actor. I'm not going to mention his name,
Okay.
but he played a holographic character. Okay,
Okay.
and he was listening to this guy, and he was like, I remember watching his hand do this. Like I'm forcing myself to keep my mouth shut. And
Right.
this guy was telling him why he thought the show was bad, but he watches it every week, hoping the show would get better.
Oh my god.
So he was like saying to this guy, "Okay, well, I understand how you feel. Keep watching it next year, and when I'm here at DragonCon, you and I meet and we'll talk about it."
Oh, wow.
And the guy says, "Okay, man. Well, if you say so." They shook hands and walked away. And I remember him going to Nichelle Nichols, going, "At least he watched the show."
Oh, man.
And just listen to this guy talk. I got a VIP room, a VIP ticket to this thing. And I don't know why I still remember this,
Mhm.
but a friend of mine couldn't go, gave me his ticket. I went. Nichelle Nichols sang. I absolutely love hearing her sing. This guy was come to our table, told me he was a waiter before he was an actor. He waited for years between doing all these, what do you call them there when you auditions? Thank you. Between
Oh,
all of his
okay.
auditions,
Right.
and so he says like just being on this show was like different for him,
Mhm.
and he says certain habits are like hard to like ignore.
Right.
He was like being a waiter. He says the first thing he did when he walked into the room was like look over all the food to make sure it was right. He says certain things about him. He as a waiter, you just don't forget. But I
Yeah.
think his name was Robert Picardo or something like that.
Yeah, his name's Robert Picardo. He was the, uh, doctor in
Yeah,
Voyage.
so and he was an absolute wonderful person, Robert Picardo. So I liked him, and I remember talking to some people. I mean, the way DragonCon was then, we're talking about the mid like 20 teens,
Yeah.
is when things just like exploded and just became this thing. It's like almost like they were just like printing tickets to see how many people they can get in and count the dough.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the dealer's room changed then.
That
The
it goes
dealer's
to
room
the
was like
Apparel Mart now, or the
the
America's Mart?
apparel mart,
Yeah, the Apparel
the
Mart.
American mart. So it was only one floor then. Now it's up to like one, two, it's up to four floors now
Oh, wow.
of people buying junk. And I'm like, look, it's just the only thing I really need to buy at 61 years of age was like dice for my D&D game. I need more dice like I need a hole in my head. I
Right.
really don't need them, but I got them.
Yeah.
But they're selling all kinds of stuff there,
Yeah.
and you got all kinds of fans. So that's what DragonCon was in. There've been other cons I go to that I love,
Yeah.
and people keep asking me, "How does this con compare to DragonCon?" I said, "This is a science fiction convention where we're at now. Okay, DragonCon is its own thing.
It
All
is
right,
focuses on
DragonCon."
everything. Yeah.
So they have this thing called GalaxyCon in North Carolina,
Mhm.
and it's a big con, and I think they're they want it to become an event like DragonCon, which I'm saying, don't do that. That's dumb. We only need one DragonCon, okay? We don't need to have like two DragonCons.
Right.
Um, I I love going to the smaller events.
Yeah.
I guess because it's more. You see how you and I are talking?
Yeah.
Um, the events are more like that personal. They're more intimate. I think the intimacy of a con is what I miss, and
Right.
I have to work hard to get that at Dragon Con. But the intimacy of a con where you're talking about what is it about certain characters you like, whether it's like Harry Potter, or one of these other shows, and it's interesting how people talk about characters and how just watching a movie or reading the books make them feel.
Mhm.
So
So
I
you would
enjoyed that.
prefer nowadays to kind of recapture what it was like at DragonCon in the 90s and early 2000s. That intimacy um, is in the smaller things now, right?
Yes, I prefer the smaller things. I love the intimate, like Heroes Con here in Charlotte.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not much of a Heroes comic book type fan. However, when I want to go to Hero Con,
Yeah.
um, I enjoy the artist I meet there.
Mm.
I enjoy watching these guys come out of the sticks of North Carolina with those thick ass draws and whatnot, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, gotta get me this character right here. Oh hell yeah, boy! This animation right here, hot diggity damn! I like this boy." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah. Look at this fella here. To call him Astro Boy. Now I'm not gonna tell him I used to watch Astro Boy back in 1964.
No,
He's
no.
just discovered Speed Racer, okay? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let him have his fun. I'm gonna let him enjoy himself. And
Yeah.
these guys were just buying these books, drinking their coffee, and just taking big stacks of books back home, enjoying their
You go to
fandom.
like
Like different conventions, like Heroes Con and other smaller conventions around Charlotte. I'm actively involved in this thing called Con Carolinas.
Uh-huh.
That's a very small, intimate con here in Charlotte. I think last year they actually got to like 1,300 people.
Oh,
So wow, 1,300, good. Let's keep it no bigger than that, for crying out loud. Because I like walking through halls. I like looking at people I'm familiar with, saying hello. But mainly, that's a con where you have a bunch of authors and gamers at that con.
right.
People selling books and it's a bunch of local authors who are in that's Falstaff Books, who's the main contributor to Con Carolinas.
Mhm.
I go there and I do an SCA demo. Go to the con parties.
Wow.
Uh, because I love me a good con party where I'm sitting around eating food, hearing these people talk about, their lives and other
Right.
cons they go to. Yeah, I've enjoyed some wonderful conventions again. And the whole thing about the convention is not so much the convention itself, as I try to explain to people. I mean, you take all the conventions I've ever been to,
Mhm.
it's more about community.
Right.
And the reason why I say community is that you're there sharing interests with people who like the same things that you do, and they have the same values on things that you do.
So tell me how all of that is has shaped your worldview, and what is kind of the most important part of that that you take away from it?
Shape my worldview. Oh, that's a rabbit hole, but I'm just gonna try to narrow it down.
Okay.
Um, okay. Um, I'm just gonna take it. I'm just gonna start here and try to keep it simple.
Mhm.
You got infinite diversities, infinite combinations. Okay.
Oh
You're
yeah.
gonna meet
Star Trek.
people from Star Trek, and uh, don't judge people on how they look, how they present themselves, or they may not share all the same views that you have. But people have the right to have their beliefs. And they have the right to how they worship and whatever political views, and hear them, show them respect, and try to find some common ground. Which is why I have friends who are all over the place politically, all over the place socially, And even when I'm not talking about the things that you and I are talking about now, just talking about their lives,
Mhm.
talking about their jobs and that sort of thing, I have to welcome it and have to say, okay, I understand that. I mean, I look at my Facebook friends and I'm like looking at all the stuff that they're into, and it goes from one end of the spectrum to the next.
What is your favorite celebrity story from all of your years at DragonCon and all the other conventions? Do you have a favorite celebrity interaction story?
Yep. You ever heard of this show called Firefly?
I have. I was a big fan.
I was in I was in the Hyatt, and the guy who played the red-haired guy, forget that actor's name.
Um,
Ron Glass, and the lady who played the engineer.
I
Those
love him.
three were in the
Okay.
Hyatt Regency. And I was not paying attention. I was walking, and I like walk right in the middle of all three of them. I'm like, whoa, whoa, sorry, sorry. They're like, oh, step back. Oh, good. Oh, so do you like Serenity? What's Serenity?
Uh,
Firefly. Have you seen Firefly? What's Firefly? Wait a minute. I know you from Barney Miller. So, so I knew Ron Glass from Barney Miller, and they were trying to tell me about this show.
Mhm.
Well, other people were walking around with brown coats and crap, and I never caught on to it until I went home to a Blockbuster of all places,
Yeah.
and I started reading all these Firefly videos. I'm like, holy crap, how did I miss this show? And later I found out a lot of people missed the show.
Yeah.
Um, but that was one of my favorite ones. The guy who played Mr. Garibaldi on
Yeah.
what was it? Yeah.
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I remember meeting that actor,
Yeah.
him and Walter Koenig
Mhm.
at a convention that a friend of mine ran. She's no longer with us, but she died, but she ran a con in Raleigh. And I remember hanging out with that actor because he gambled with a lot of people, told us
Yeah.
about Hollywood, told us about Wall Street because he worked on Wall Street. He was an actor. I didn't know that he actually produced some of the shows
Wow.
on Babylon 5, and he's one of the directors.
Oh,
And he was telling us about like how they thought about killing the show. And he's like, "Are you guys crazy? Are you guys crazy?" Because he was telling us to show how they were going to end Babylon 5. But
right.
he's saying, like, why would you end the show when there's so many people watching? If people watching it, that means you guys are making money. If you guys are making money, like you're going to kill the thing that's making. How are you guys producers? Okay. Who's running this network? And he was
Oh,
like telling us about it's like not just Babylon 5, but it says like a lot of shows are like that. It says like the bean counters are unaware of like where the money's really coming from.
yeah.
And he was just spilled the beans on how goofy Hollywood was to begin with. And I didn't know he worked with Martha Stewart. Him and
Really?
Martha Stewart were, yeah, they were stockbrokers together.
Oh my gosh.
And so he was telling us all kinds of
Because
stuff.
I met him too. Jerry Doyle. That's his name.
Thank you, Jerry Doyle.
Jerry
All right,
Doyle.
thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Yeah.
I knew it was
He's
something else. But forgive me. But he was a bunch of fun. I got big hands. His hands were bigger than mine. He could
yeah.
wrap his hands around mine. And he was just a fun guy to talk to. And we were talking to him Saturday, and he says, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to be that guy, but tomorrow when you guys see me, okay, I'm gonna have a slight hangover, and I got to speak to a friend of my producers." Okay, what? Well, it's like he says these people are coming, and I got to eat with.
Oh.
I got to talk to them. So I got to meet with these people. I got to talk to them. He
Uh,
says, more than likely, I'm probably
uh.
gonna sit there at a table and says, I just have to eat with you guys. Don't have to talk to you. He just said I had to meet with. So I remember leaving that con the next day.
Mm,
Uh, I saw her name was Ruth Bagby who ran this convention. So
okay.
Ruth was gonna wrap things up at the convention. She really didn't need me, so I was gonna drive from Raleigh back home.
Uh-huh.
It was called Bab Track. That was the name of that convention. So I was leaving the hotel. Mr. Doyle, now that I remember his name, he was leaving the hotel. He stopped and shook everybody's hand who who he'd been playing blackjack with and talking to the night before,
Oh
and he
wow.
was that damn
Were
cool.
you did you
So
ever
it's like
watch Doctor Who? Were you ever a fan?
I love me some Doctor Who when Tom Baker was there. I enjoyed Sylvester McCoy after I met him in person.
Oh, he's
Now I met
lovely.
him. Yeah, I met him at Magnum Opus Con,
Oh,
and he was doing his Shakespeare dissertations in America. But when he heard like there was this convention who would pay him to come to it, he says, "Sure, I'll come." So he came as Doctor Who, and I absolutely love speaking to Sylvester McCoy. I enjoyed talking to Colin Baker. Colin Baker was fun,
yeah,
just not very gripping. But Colin, once met Sylvester McCoy, I've seen him in other things as well and enjoyed him.
yeah.
So
The
I
one
game
game
I really regret not playing was I'm in DragonCon. I'm going through the Marriott Marquis,
uh-huh.
and I'm taking pictures. I'm doing stuff, and some guy just looks over at me. He's kind of a tall, pudgy guy. He says, "You want to play? You ever play Catan? Would you like to learn?" I'm like, "Not now, sir. I appreciate you asking." When I got to the elevators, I realized who that guy was who just asked me to come play Catan with him, and it was the guy who played Wesley Crusher from Star Trek. It was Will Wheaton
Well,
asked me
we
to come play,
invited you to play Catan and you told him no.
and I told him no. So I'm like, I can't go back now after just told him no, and I realized who he is. That's
Right.
gonna like look bad. So I'm
Oh.
like, damn, I can't believe I just said no to Wesley Crusher. So I'm like, okay, okay, dude, just go take your pictures. You'll be fine. And
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to share that I have not asked you about? Any particular story or wisdom that you would like to share with the world? And or at anything that we talked about before that you would like to expand on?
uh, I don't know. I guess only wisdom from me. Yeah, good luck. Uh,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Everybody has
I
wisdom.
believe you don't live long. Okay, here I am, 62, and life is short. Enjoy it. Um, life is short. Hope other people enjoy it. And uh, the time that you walk and work, appreciate it.
So that sounds like very good wisdom. And is there any advice that you would give to your younger self if you could go back and say, young James, this is what you should do?
Yeah, not be so impulsive. Not be so impulsive.
Oh, all
Control
right.
that impulse.
Okay. Excellent. Tell me,
Now,
okay, based on like our talks about DragonCon conventions, um, culture today, pop culture today, what is some wisdom that you can share with maybe the younger folks that are in this, and what are your thoughts about kind of where this might head into the future?
um, there's a thing called change. It's constant, and the best way to appreciate change is to look into the past, and all the pieces fall together.
Okay.
Because the future is made now, not tomorrow.
You're very correct about that. Yeah. All right. So this has been very interesting interview, and I am so glad that I hit that record button again. Thank you so very, very much. Episode
By all
one,
means, thank you.
Mr. James Morrow, uh, the pioneer of the Stella Nova's One Story at a Time. Episode one, Guinea Pig. And I'm going to see you when I do episode 100.
I'm looking
To
forward to it.
that's my goal now, is to get all the way back around to you at episode 100. A couple of final questions. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Both.
Both. That's surprising. There's
Both.
one
Both
or
are
the
good.
other. But yeah, they both are really good. Okay, now Star Trek, Picard or Kirk or Cisco.
I like all of I like all of them. Um, I'm gonna say, okay. Let me just say Cisco because Cisco didn't have to go anywhere. He just had to stay there. Everybody came to him.
Yeah, he had to deal with a lot of crap though too.